Chapter 1. Pirates. Early winter. At the city's outskirts, a whine inn stood, its pillars and beams made of elm wood, long years having turned them a faint blackish yellow. In the humid environment influenced by the east coast monsoon, the slightly damp campfire crackled, spitting sparks. The rich scent of the sea emanated from leather greaves, polished iron gleamed with sharp light, and rough bodies were covered in musket bullet holes and hideous scars. The flames reflected in the aberrant eyes of desperados. The waiter's fingers trembled, the woman wept, covering her face, and the innkeeper's face was ashen. All customers had long since fled in terror, escaping the vicious bandits. The Black Sail Pirate Crew, a notorious organization on the east coast of the Bima Principality, was at work here. Captain Lee conducted his affairs according to 3 principles, which allowed him to survive for 10 years in this treacherous another world without external modifiers and with a language barrier. The first was, if you're not ruthless, you can't stand firm. When doing business, it's about presentation. Whether you're truly ruthless isn't important, but you must make the other party feel you are. His weapon was a blood-stained flail, with an iron-cased wooden handle at one end, attached by a chain to 2 spiked iron balls, each half the size of a head. He used 2 because Lee considered it noble area damage. This was a secondary weapon, used against minor henchmen. His primary weapon was a long-handled warhammer over a meter long, propped to one side. The pick on the back of the large iron hammer was sharp enough to mine like a pickaxe, though most of the time it was used to collect other things. Lee called it frost rhododendron crying blood. Sadder than sadness, too painful. He believed his attire was also very fashionable and intimidating. His beard had grown into trendy braids. His short hair stood up like steel needles, and a finger-thick scar cut across his nose, almost reaching both ears, from a time he was nearly decapitated by an axe. He wore light leather breastplate, cotton and linen trousers, and a pair of dark, broad-toed leather boots. Your loan plus interest, and my service fee, total 17 Allen gold dragons. Lee was tall, about 2 meters, with a hoarse voice. Years of exposure to the sea had made his skin rough. He had acted the part so well that he himself believed he was a ruthless desperado. Under the Coinage Act passed in Holy Allen Calendar 1277, anyone could bring gold or silver bars to the mint to be coined without charge, or exchange them immediately for equivalent coins. In the Great Wall Campaign, the Bima Kingdom lost to the Aran Empire, which dominated the western continent. Although it was demoted to a principality, its autonomy was quite limited, having been integrated into the empire's currency settlement system, sacrificing the huge profits from seigniorage and being long constrained. 1 Allen gold dragon was approximately equal to 200 silver coins, and 1 silver coin was approximately equal to 50 copper noahs. Only the largest denomination, the Allen gold dragon, was relatively rare and people used its formal name. The others were also called Allen silver coins and Allen copper coins. 17 Allen gold dragons. The innkeeper choked, as this was no small sum. It was enough to purchase a decent residence with a living room in a coastal town. Settle the bill quickly. I don't care, but these 2 lords here don't want to make a trip for nothing. Lee slammed his flail onto the table with a clang, crossing his legs and rocking his chair without fear of falling. The second principle was, if you can't lead a team, you'll work yourself to death. Many hands make light work. Are you a good fighter? When doing business, you need influence. Whether your companions are ruthless isn't important, but they must look ruthless. To resolve today's matter, Lee brought 2 of the more menacing-looking members from his 11-person crew, including himself, to keep order. Helmsman Aux the Sharkman, 2 meters 80 tall, wearing brown leather pants and boots, shirtless with bulging muscles. A member of the Sharkman race, his sturdy light blue skin was covered in scars. The fins on his back had been torn off for unknown reasons, leaving a huge, hideous wound. The sharp fins at his elbow joints were covered in scratches but still usable. His terrifying height made him stand like an iron tower, his hands resting on an oversized greatsword, like a door panel, propped on the floor. Leah's evaluation of him was, my brother Ao, ruthless and a man of few words. Sailmaster, Rain the werewolf, 2 meters 40 tall, his dark red leather coat stretched by shoulders like a double-door refrigerator. He had a wolf's head and a human body, his silver-gray hair on his head uncombed and greasy, matted. His fangs showed, making him extremely fierce. His only weapons were gauntlets protecting his hands. He excelled at martial arts, close-quarters combat, which meant tearing people apart with his claws, disemboweling them. Leah's evaluation of him was, a psychopath. Last time, while shaking down a port town, Rain used pliers to crush 3 of a lord's teeth, force-feeding him lemon and chili, making the rich dental nerves feel exquisite pain. At this moment, Rain was acting crazy again. This knife of mine is coated with poison brewed by an alchemist. Rain bared his gaping maw, pulled out a gleaming dagger, his long tongue covered in barbs like a bone-scraping steel knife, secreting viscous saliva that dripped onto the floor, looking like he was about to lick it up. The innkeeper didn't know what to say. "Oh, I didn't lick it yet. I didn't lick it yet," he. Rain feigned a move, letting out a chilling laugh, his claws scratching the table, the sharp, grating sound tormenting the ears. Lee pinched his chin, truly a bit crazy. The atmosphere he painstakingly created was gone. He could only place his hopes on the ruthless and taciturn AUX. Because of AUX's personal experience, his fins were broken, making it impossible for him to survive in the sea. Most sharkmen cannot establish themselves on land for long, which is tantamount to a death sentence, but he was an exception. With his powerful and exaggerated physical fitness, for him it was just a bit of altitude sickness requiring more hydration. At this moment, he twisted open the spigot of the ale barrel, pouring himself cup after cup and chugging them down as if no one else was there. In less than a few minutes, he drank more than 20 cups like a bandit. His eyes narrowed. Was he drinking so wildly because it was free? It makes you look greedy and weak, you bastard. The atmosphere was completely gone, failing to convey the other party's desperate situation. Bring out the ruthlessness you usually show when killing and plundering. Get it together. You always mess up at critical moments. Lee hissed a breath. All right, today, either settle the payment or... Lee felt he could only rely on himself. His eyes flashed coldly as he stood up, walked to AUX's side, and calmly turned off the spigot. AUX. Immediately after, Lee became ruthless, directly smashing a barrel of high-proof liquor with his chain flail. The wooden planks split open. He had great strength, lifting the rope on the barrel and splashing it everywhere, drenching the floor. AUX and Rain also understood. Their strength was terrifying. AUX punched through a sealed hardwood barrel, and Rain also poked holes with his claws. The 2 towering monsters splashed these accelerants everywhere. All 11 members of the Black Sail pirate crew were wanted fugitives with bounties. Lee called them the Dream Team. If one were to compare being a pirate to drawing cards in a mobile game, his lineup, while not an all-powerful gold team, was composed entirely of villains. Ordinary people would be too terrified to move if they even looked them in the eye. Rain even splashed the innkeeper all over. Either I burn this entire place down. Lee smashed a kerosene lantern, continuing to add, if even one word was amiss, he would set the place ablaze. The innkeeper was already on his knees, begging for mercy incoherently. His words slurred and inarticulate, and his wife cried even more intensely. Rain saw the abundant leftovers on the table left by customers. Being kind-hearted wouldn't earn money, and it was unlikely they could produce such a huge sum today. I doubt he has any money on him. Just burn it. Genshin, activate. Under Lee's influence over many years, Rain had learned an extremely peculiar verbal tic. Even though he himself didn't understand what it meant, he found it interesting and yearned to burn everything to ashes for everyone's amusement. UX was indifferent, apathetic to life and death, and nonchalantly took a bottle of wine from the liquor cabinet, bit open the cork and chugged it down. Lee's ability to get to where he was today with a ship and a team was entirely due to his 3 principles. The 3rd principle was, go after whoever has money. Bullying ordinary people makes you look stupid. All his subordinates are capable, all of them desperados who live by the sword. The Dark Elf Shoddy, the Black Sail pirate cruise shipwright, always had connections. He infiltrated a private bank in Linden City on the east coast of the Bima Principality, lay low for over half a month, found their ledgers and identified some debtors. Go big or go home. Lee stared at the pleading innkeeper and said, 17 Allen gold dragons is indeed no small sum. I have a compromise. You borrowed 8 at a monthly interest of 30%, which has doubled by today. But I am a righteous man. Surely you can come up with 5. Everything went smoothly. The 3 of them, based on the ledger's shoddy the Dark Elf had obtained, sought out debtors to collect. They only collected half of the borrowed amount, which counted as their service fee for settling matters for these loan sharks. By now, they had collected over 70 Allen gold dragons, and debt collection around Linden City was almost complete. As for Shoddy the shipwright and for other ruthless individuals, if nothing unexpected happened, they should be in the private bank's stronghold, unleashing a massacre and plundering their treasury. Lee was willing to call Shoddy the East Coast Idea King. Chapter 2-2. East Coast. As one of the outlets to the sea on the East Coast, Linden City's vast trade network necessitated extensive road construction radiating outwards, far surpassing the packed earth roads of the countryside. These were all paved with flagstones, making them proper roads, facilitating cargo transport, and there were many inns along the way. Convenient transportation also made Linden City a melting pot, with hawkers and porters everywhere, and merchants traveling north and south becoming easy prey for outlaws. The Black Sail pirate crew also joined this thriving market, meticulously developing it. The sea breeze of early winter already carried a chill. At noon, the sun was abundant, and the light spots projected onto the flagstone path, dappled by tree leaves, swayed like a kaleidoscope in the wind, creating a bright and alluring scenery. But three fierce-looking men were out of place with this beautiful scenery. Lee, having collected the debts, was currently walking towards Linden City, heading to the meeting point at the inn, a journey of about half an hour. It wasn't that Lee didn't want to get some mounts. With AUX and Rain's physiques, 2 horses would die of exhaustion in a day. Larger capacity mounts, such as military griffins or lizard-like land dragons, were too expensive, and he didn't want to waste money. Lee walked along, counting the money. The money from the inn, plus the debts collected earlier, totaled 79 gold dragons. AUX, with his massive greatsword weighing over 300 caddies strapped to his back effortlessly, had a stern face. In his left hand, he carried a heavy sack, about the size of a human head. It contained Aran silver coins, roughly 700 to 800 of them, as not everyone could afford gold dragons. A great harvest. Rain walked empty-handed, utterly carefree, and with an itchy hand, he used his height to raise a paw and snap a tree branch. After counting the money, Leah's gloomy face showed no joy. Excluding himself, there were 10 core members in the gang, all of whom needed a share of the loot. Added to that were the maintenance costs for the 2-masted sailboat, docking fees at Secret Port, necessary supplies for sea voyages, and finally, a token of respect for the Linden City Sheriff. After all, operating right under their noses incurred extremely high expenses, and furthermore, many crew members had died last time, necessitating urgent recruitment of sailors. Damn it! When will the main quest start? This is getting tiresome. Lee tied up the money bag with a rope, casually flung it to Rain. This werewolf had a handle on him, so he wasn't afraid of him running off. Everyone wanted a stable life, but the events of 7 years ago had driven him to a dead end, leaving him no choice but to go out to sea. You're right, but the Black Sail Pirate Crew is a brand new commercial organization independently developed by Lee. The story takes place on the east coast of the Western continent. You will play a poor wretch hovering on the brink of death, encountering scumbags of various personalities and unique abilities, and together with them, you will die in the streets and have your corpses exposed in the wilderness. Rain weighed the money bag. Occasionally hearing Lee speak like this, he found the sentence structure very interesting. Stop babbling. Can you say something auspicious? Lee looked at him with an idiotic gaze. Perhaps he had been infected with rabies or something a long time ago, but his strong immunity had been resisting it, and his mental state was quite unstable. Main quest, for example? AUX had also been with Black Sail for over 2 years and gradually understood some of the strange terms Lee used. For example, I meet a woman on the roadside, an exiled princess. I help her restore her country and marry her along the way. This princess is a peerless beauty or something. Or I discover an evil organization attempting to overthrow the Western continent, and I sweep through them, gaining the appreciation of the old emperor, getting promoted, or even taking his place. Also, did I mention I'm an inventor? Ha 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 ha. Lee sneered, thinking it was time to show off his true skills. Steam engines, industrial revolution, information technology, controllable nuclear fusion, warp starships, ascending to the heavens to fight gods. Wait. It seemed his knowledge had regressed to that of a low IQ person, or even worse after several years of playing games in college. Then never mind. Although there were many strange races here, the laws of physics were surprisingly stringent, with mechanics and thermodynamics so rigorous that Lee wanted to cry. There was no power system, or rather, there were countless power systems, and you never knew exactly where some high combat individuals derived their strength. Most of the time, it was simply about brute force like the Alan Sword King. He sounded incredibly formidable and was genuinely quite powerful, capable of cutting down many foes. Although he hadn't personally met such high-level characters, perhaps he could even conjure sword energy or something. But if I brought the Black Sail Pirate Crew, 10 desperate lunatics to gang up on you with sneak attacks, poison, and hostage threats, How would you respond, sir? Not to mention the other 9, AUX's door-sized greatsword, with just a normal swing, once cut 3 mountain bandits in half at the waist. It was as gruesome as it gets, their insides spilling out, and they still crawled for 5 or 6 seconds on the ground before dying. That being said, sorcerers also existed, though they were relatively rare, and most were quite useless. Their showmanship-like tricks couldn't be called combat power. But there were also extremely terrifying sorcerers. 10 years ago, Li suffered greatly from one, and it was deeply connected to his arrival here. That kind of sorcery had already transcended the realm of magic. If one had to describe it, it was some kind of great power. Although Li had been here for 10 years, there was still so much unknown about this world. There was a demon in the pirate crew. Although he was a low-level demon, he was a genuine demon. He didn't come from the western continent, the harsh northern lands, the Far East archipelago, or any other place on the map. Li discovered him on an uninhabited island during a voyage. According to him, he was a member of the demon god Agar's Dagon's expeditionary force, but he had an accident midway and lost contact with his legion. While lost, he was unlucky enough to stumble upon an otherworldly gate. He didn't know how long passed in a daze before he drifted to this uncharted land. He had lived like a savage on the isolated island for over a decade, utterly miserable, knowing nothing, and his predicament was comparable to Li's. Such an encounter once led Li to believe he was a key character to trigger the main quest, but he later realized he had overthought it. Whether he could even beat Li was a question. He was quite weak. It was just that his blood-red skin and goat horns looked intimidating, and he was skilled in carpentry caulking and tool repair, so Li kept him on the ship to work, serving as a shipwright with Shoddy. If there was anything extraordinary about this demon, it was his extremely tenacious vitality and exaggerated healing ability. Wounds slowly healed visibly, and severed hands and feet could regrow in 10 days to half a month. He could also survive without food, but he would lack strength and still needed to eat, otherwise he would pant like a bellows doing any physical labor. UX looked at Li with an idiotic gaze. What the hell was this about restoring a country and evil organizations? He himself was the leader of an illegal organization, all right? He was rendered speechless. Having ambition was a good thing, and he had joined because he saw Li was quite ambitious and played big, but sometimes he was too ambitious, fantasizing about cliché story plots like an imbecile. If you, like me, are also an inventor, then I think this matter truly is. Rain knew Li's true capabilities and that he had no connection to being an inventor, so he didn't finish his sentence. Stop your damn rambling. Let's head back to the inn's meeting point first. If they haven't finished their business, we'll go check out the underground bank. Li said calmly. The collected debts were just basic assurance to cover various expenses. The money in the treasury was the main sum, and nothing could go wrong, otherwise all their efforts these days would be for naught. Chapter 3. Linden City. In the cold northern night, your kidney was harvested, while in the warm southern sun, I kill like a demon. Li tampered with the lyrics, hoping for more money in the underground bank's vault. If he had 300 gold dragons, he could live exceptionally well for at least half a year and enjoy himself in Heavenly Kingdom Port. Please, stop with your hometown dialect. Rain's head felt like it was swelling, and he cried out in disgust, as if he had eaten a lemon. Li's singing was already terrible, and speaking an unknown language made him even more annoying. After this, will we stay in Linden City for a while or return to Heavenly Kingdom Port? UX got straight to the point. Everyone on the ship had a dead or alive bounty on their heads, and the Black Sail pirate crew's reputation preceded them. Li's bounty was particularly substantial. AUX sometimes even thought about killing him himself. Bounty hunters would likely track them down eventually. Changes could occur over time, so it was safer at sea, and returning to Heavenly Kingdom Port quickly would be best. Well, Li stroked his chin, lost in thought. About 12,000 nautical miles off the east coast of the Bima Principality lay a vast island known as Heavenly Kingdom Port. Its name wasn't particularly auspicious. Another alias was Pirate Republic. Heavenly Kingdom Port offered free mooring for any ship in any weather, making it an ideal hiding place favored by pirates and raiders. In the Holy Allen Calendar 1274, the Empire launched an eastward expedition. The Great Wall battle crushed the Bima Kingdom. Its defenses collapsed, and the Empire advanced directly. Faced with the complete loss of land and coinage terms, King Bima swore to never surrender. The Empire's mighty army, like divine soldiers, cut through to the coast. The king, trapped in an isolated city, was defeated and committed suicide, wishing only that his people would be spared from a massacre. His legitimate son, Philip VI, knowing that the situation was beyond remedy, had no choice but to surrender. He traveled to the Yalan imperial capital for peace talks but was tragically lured and assassinated in the imperial palace. Finally, a distant relative of the Bhima royal family, who was barely connected, was propped up as a puppet king, and the Bhima kingdom was henceforth changed into a principality. It should have ended there, but the Aran emperor was extremely ambitious. He felled trees to build ships, smelted metal to forge swords, and continued the eastward expedition, even attempting to conquer the Far East archipelago. The combined area of these islands was even more terrifying than the already vast western continent, also known as the Myriad Nations. Initially, Heavenly Kingdom Port was built as a military fortress, a frontline base for stockpiling supplies. However, the battle lines were stretched too thin, and maritime logistics couldn't keep up with consumption. Even if the amphibious landings were successful, and several nations were invaded and conquered as bridgeheads, the Aran Emperor suffered repeated defeats as a united army was formed. The eastward expedition thus concluded inconclusively. Later, Heavenly Kingdom Port transitioned into a commercial port, but due to its remote location, the Emperor's reach was limited. Unexpectedly, the puppet prince he supported also had rebellious tendencies, repeatedly urging the stationing of troops there to no avail. Soon, it was occupied by lawless seafarers. For many years, leveraging the Emperor's construction that made it easy to defend yet difficult to attack, Heavenly Kingdom Port became a stronghold for pirates, raiders, and shipwrecked sailors. These individuals made Heavenly Kingdom Port notorious, also known as the Pirate Republic. They often faked lighthouses on isolated islands and cliffs in the eastern waters, luring ships onto reefs, then plundering their cargo. Lee was one of them. In the deep blue, black sail flew. Gold and silver treasures, bloodied blades clanged. Arson, murder, plunder, no regard for gods. Youth fades. All turn to wine and meat. This was Leah's life. Let's talk after we get the money. We can't stay on shore for too long. My deal with the local sheriff has a time limit. No more than a week. After some thought, Lee first reassured AUX, knowing him to be a cautious and meticulous person. AUX had never messed up any task he took on. Not once, which was why he was made helmsman, equivalent to the second mate. The others had, more or less, caused trouble. He also planned to recruit more sailors. The last time he recruited, he ended up with a daring traitor who tried to hijack his ship. Dozens of fugitives from all corners were incited to mutiny. Fortunately, the first mate and figures like AUX and Rain, who could take on 100 men, kept things under control. All the mutineers were killed and thrown into the sea to feed the fish. As for the ringleader, Rain was a master of torture. After this incident, all members of Black Sail, except for the 10 core members, also fled after going ashore. Now, with difficult cash flow and an urgent need for manpower, Shoddy, the East Coast's idea man, came up with this two birds with one stone scheme. Over the years, Lee had recruited countless people, many of whom died. Only the toughest survived to become core members with extremely high combat power. They could establish themselves anywhere and command respect. But like him, they were desperate outlaws with no place to belong, which was why they went to sea to do business. Arriving at the highest city on the East Coast, Linden City, Rain burst into an inexplicable cheer. Lee frowned. While Rain was a psychopath, he was also an imitator. When ordering food at a restaurant, he'd order whatever others were eating. His stylish dark red leather coat was also stripped from a fashion trendsetter. The crew members on the ship had, more or less, picked up some verbal tics. Lee didn't know why these phrases were still popular in this other world, probably because they were highly versatile and their meaning had been extended to the extreme in the current context. Linden City guarded a bay on the East Coast with a small tidal range, boasting a wide, deep harbor, a natural safe haven, backed by foothills and lush with greenery. Seabirds circled in the azure sky. Outside the city, vast grasslands stretched into a verdant, fertile plain. The main road was bustling with traffic, and merchants and hawkers milled about. Most were dressed simply. People of higher status like priests, knights, or noble families had special passages and wouldn't be seen here. The city walls were all built of gray stone, airtight, about 10 meters high, with numerous watchtowers. The entrance checkpoint was guarded by fully armed soldiers with long spears. Given the rampant illegal organizations in coastal areas, laws had become stricter. Adventure groups and merchants had to present documents with guild seals to enter the city. Even farmers selling crops needed a certificate issued by the local town official. The entrance was bustling, with guards stopping groups of people to inspect their documents. The long queues were a hive of activity, extremely noisy, with people of all races. There were many adventurers and mercenaries carrying weapons, tall and imposing, with unfriendly faces, looking to make a living in the developed coastal regions. AUX and Rain were easily spotted even among the tall crowd, partly due to their racial advantage, though not significantly. Both were unusually tall even within their own races, figures of authority. As the trio walked by, their dangerous aura was unmistakable. People consciously made way, though some were displeased. They dared not speak, much less make eye contact. Lee had no time to foolishly stand in line for inspection. At the very front, a burly, red-haired adventurer was presenting his Adventurers Guild documents. UX didn't want to wait a second longer, so he pushed the man aside. Under the immense force, the adventurer nearly toppled over, staggering several steps and bracing himself with his hands on the ground to avoid falling. This man was the leader of an adventure group. Realizing what happened, he searched for the person who pushed him, ready to erupt. AUX seemed to sense it and casually glanced over. The adventure group leader, seeing him clearly, immediately dared not move. Staring at the oversized greatsword weighing over 300 Gene on AUX's back, he held his tongue and swallowed his anger. Several members of his adventure group had anger in their eyes. An archer was about to draw an arrow from his quiver, confident he could shoot out the big man's eye and pierce his head, but the adventure group leader stopped him, shaking his head at the archer. The guards, seeing the trio, immediately recognized them as dangerous individuals and found them somewhat familiar, as if they had seen them somewhere before. However, they dared not stop them, nor dared to let them in just like that, so they quickly called for the guard captain. Linden City Sheriff had already given a heads-up, so the guard captain knew the reason. He arrived and said nothing, but with so many people outside, he still had to put on a show and ask Lee to casually present something as a formality. Lee! But he had no paper documents or parchment scrolls on him. Lee reached into his breastplate, fumbling for a moment. This was all he had. The guard captain was dumbfounded when he saw what Lee presented. Lee had shown his own wanted poster. Although the fierce bandit in the drawing and Lee himself didn't match in every detail, the likeness was quite striking, and it was clear they were the same person. Go in. The guard captain frowned deeply but did not pursue the matter. The trio openly entered Linden City. Captain, why didn't you let me shoot him dead just now? He's just tall and strong, that's all. The archer was somewhat vexed. He had come to Linden City hoping to make a name for himself, but he had suffered a silent loss as soon as he arrived. The adventure group leader also felt a bit humiliated, but he soon swallowed it and explained, "Before coming here, I did some preparation. I asked a familiar ship merchant what to watch out for and who not to provoke. They are members of the Black Sail pirate crew, infamous along this coast. Don't get involved with them." Black Sail pirate crew. Sounds familiar. Wait, aren't they the pirate group that killed the Blue Bay Port Lord's family 2 months ago? A swordsman remembered, though he heard that the Blue Bay Port Lord's family weren't good people, all members of some cult, performing child sacrifices and such. This incident was widely celebrated, and the pirate group's reputation was mixed. How is that possible? They committed such a crime and can still swagger into the city? The archer's voice was inadvertently loud, disbelieving. Were those guards blind? Keep your voice down, the adventure group leader whispered. Linden City is a major city, an important port for the principality. It's not a direct fief of anyone, and the power dynamics are complex. The noble lords inside are probably fighting fiercely among themselves and need outsiders to get things done. I see. The swordsman suddenly understood. These inspections only kept petty criminals with records out, preventing the city from descending into chaos and hindering business. Truly formidable individuals, however, could be appreciated by the noble lords and get a piece of the pie. The waters here seemed quite deep. The archer was silent for a moment after hearing this, still somewhat unconvinced, and added, "What's this? Once we make a name for ourselves and become Hall of Fame adventurers, these pirates and bandits will just be small fries." The adventure group leader gave a bitter smile. Having such aspirations was good, but there were so many capable people on the East Coast. To gain some renown in such a chaotic place was already quite remarkable. Hall-level adventurers, huh? I hope so. The captain said no more, took out his guild certificate, and continued to honestly undergo inspection. Chapter 4. Birds of a Feather. Linden City. The pointed red brick roofs were scattered in a pleasing disorder, with a few oval-curved wooden windows open. Clothes hung on lines strung with iron nails outside, and a rare few even had potted plants. The buildings on the city's outskirts were extremely dense, with square, cream-colored kiln bricks and red tiles stacked in layers. The main thoroughfares, paved with cobblestones, teemed with people. Laborers earning a living, quack, vendors selling strange and curious items, and various mercenaries and travelers. Although these residential dwellings, shops, and inns seemed haphazardly pieced together, creating a dazzling and overwhelming sight, the majestic buildings rising from the ground in Linden City's inner ring could be seen from anywhere in the city. The Admiral's Castle, along with other key functional buildings like the Adventurers Guild, the Municipal Affairs Office, noble estates, and high-end entertainment venues they operated. Linden City also boasted a respectable arcane academy and several other academies, which, while not the absolute top tier, were still first-rate. Those buildings showcased the city's splendor, with arched columns, flying buttresses, and intricate wall carvings emphasizing dynamic curves. The pediments were broken, the cornices horizontally curved, and the walls highly undulating, reaching the height of luxury. The interplay of light and shadow was striking, combined with religious landscapes featuring unknown holy figures sculpted into the walls and monster carvings, casting an eerie veil of mystery. A large portion of merchants and travelers from outside would pause to admire this scenery upon entering the city gates. This did not include the Black Sail pirate crew. The three passed through the city's outskirts, going through the reeking seafood market. Here, a makeshift execution platform had been set up, and an executioner was preparing to hang a criminal with a rope. Lee had no interest in joining the crowd. Anyone who came to this place to make a living without knowing their own limits would end up like this. They arrived at the meeting point arranged with the dark elf Shoddy. If all went as expected, the task would already be completed. At the entrance of a medium-sized inn, the iron rooster weathervane on the roof swayed with the sea breeze, creaking. Lee spotted Shoddy from afar. His attire practically screamed, dangerous individual. Shoddy had joined the crew 6 years ago, having previously operated in the Far East Islands. His attire also resembled that of the people from that region. A tall figure around 1.89 meters, wearing a wide black straw cape and flood boots, with a Ronin straw hat on his head. A thin-bladed sword, characteristic of the Far East, was tucked into his waist, giving off a strong vibe of a wandering martial artist. Lee had heard Shoddy boast that he had learned Qigong in the Myriad Nations, though he didn't know if it was true. In any case, he was quite fierce in a fight. Seeing only Shoddy at the meeting point, Leah's eyebrows twitched, feeling a sense of unease. Damn it! Did something happen? Ren vigilantly looked around, worried that the 4 men had been killed and Shoddy had turned traitor, now selling out his brothers. AUX believed that given their skills, nothing could have happened to those men. The first mate and that man were terrifyingly capable. Nevertheless, he placed his hand on the hilt of his greatsword, just in case. As the leader, Lee could not show weakness. Can't your dog brain say something auspicious? Stop being so dramatic and panicking. Lee walked forward nonchalantly, his large hand directly removing Shoddy's straw hat, asking, "Where are the others?" Shoddy's face, previously hidden by the wide hat, was fully revealed. Although he was a dark elf, he possessed extremely peculiar features that were considered an ill omen in the Western continent. In reality, it had a scientific name, albinism. His skin was cold white, his eyes were crimson, and his shoulder-length silver hair was tied back with a leather band. His chiseled, three-dimensional features would make him one of the most striking even among elves. Women passing by on the side stopped in their tracks upon seeing him. A little girl, whose basket of eggs had 2 fall out, didn't even notice, completely overwhelmed by his beauty. Standing next to Lee and his 2 companions, they were simply not in the same league. They are still at the bank. The matter has been handled, but the first mate is still reconciling accounts, which will take some time. He asked me to come back and report first. Shoddy didn't want to attract attention, so he pulled his hat back and put it on his head. I knew it. How could anything happen with the first mate and brother Shah there? Ren said with a cheeky grin. What a feat! Woohoo! We're taking off. Ren was already envisioning the scene of squandering their share in Heavenly Kingdom Port. He had several mistresses in Heavenly Kingdom Port who were genuine beast folk. Now it's fantasy time. Shoddy was speechless. Ren was a very easy person to read, at least when he was in a good mood. His saliva flowed abundantly, dripping. Lee's brows relaxed upon hearing the smooth progress. If those two were unreliable, it would take no less than the Allen Sword King to handle things. The first mate with a single name, Fun. He was formerly a member of a renowned Sorcerer Alliance, a top student who graduated from the Pedon Kingdom's National Top Arcane Academy, the Oxford of the Western Continent, so to speak. He was an extremely rare and genuinely capable sorcerer, able to tank, deal damage, heal, control, perform long-range attacks, and deliver noble area of effect damage. He was practically a hexagonal warrior, and a cultured man at that, a world apart from some of the illiterates on the ship. If compared to gacha games, he was definitely a human rights card. His recruitment wasn't due to luck. This guy had caused a huge mess, traversing the continent to seek refuge in the Bima Principality. Among the entire East Coast, only he dared to take him in. The Cannon Chief, Morrison. This was the man Ren called Brother Shah. Lee was also unsure about this man. Even now, he didn't know his origins. His strength was extremely exaggerated. Sometimes, Lee even felt he could contend with the Allen Sword King. It wasn't about his brute force being incredibly outrageous, but rather his astonishing skill and combat experience, which had elevated from a technical level to an artistic one. 2 months ago, during the Blue Bay Port incident, that lord had a Golden Tier adventurer as a retainer who was undeniably strong. Morrison instantly defeated him in 3 moves. The Iron Whipblade was like a ghost, coming and going without a trace, blurring into afterimages, but it was just one strike, an extremely sharp one, that sliced across the throat. As the heart beat, blood gushed out like a geyser, flowing out competitively. He was killed on the spot, demonstrating his formidable strength. Although Lee was somewhat wary of this man, after more than a year of interacting, he found this fellow to be just an ordinary person, so there was no need to be overly suspicious. All right, Ren and AUX, you two go back to the inn, pack your bags, and return to the ship first. To be honest, I'm a bit worried about those 3 idiots guarding the ship. Shadi and I will go to the bank to settle things in the city. Then, we'll spend a few days at the dock recruiting some sailors before heading back to Heavenly Kingdom Port. Lee had finalized the plan. Indeed, as AUX said, they couldn't stay in the city for too long. Not to mention bounty hunters, the noble lords also had their own agendas. The magistrate was merely an intermediary, responsible for connecting and taking the blame. After Shadi found a way, this job, while also serving Black Sail's interests, was also about helping a lord in the city deal with an enemy. That bank and its associated casino had clashed with one lord's business, so they had to be eliminated. Continuing to work for the lord was not a good idea. They would finish this job and leave. Although official backing provided some security and allowed them to act unrestrained in the city, getting too deeply involved and becoming complacent would only lead to being manipulated when others held leverage over them. Between a desperado and a prisoner, Lee preferred the former. Arriving at the highest port of the East Sea, Ren hadn't finished speaking. Not yet, Shadi retorted. This guy really had rabies. After saying that, he led the way, taking Lee to the underground bank. As the two walked away, UX and Ren remained. Ren hesitated for a moment. What do you think of that new tiger people? I've been observing him this month, and his skills are unmistakable. He must be someone from the Thieves Guild. You know, large organizations like the Thieves Guild absolutely do not tolerate traitorous behavior like joining other forces. Such people would be chopped into human sticks and thrown into the sewers. There's something fishy about it. He's most likely a traitor who killed a leader or stole something from the guild and ran away, coming to the East Coast to lie low. Once the captain left, Ren started to gossip. He wasn't on good terms with the new people on the ship. Among the 10 core members, he was the last to join, only participating in the Blue Bay Port job with them. AUX remained silent for a moment. The Thieves Guild, huh? I don't know much about shore matters. UX brushed him off casually. He had also heard some rumors that the Thieves Guild was indeed offering a bounty for a tiger people, who had to be brought back alive. The news also claimed he had fled to the East Coast. This was quite a coincidence. If that tiger people truly was from the Thieves Guild and had stolen treasure to lie low, then it would be manageable. There would be room for negotiation, depending on whether what he stole could save his life. If he had nothing valuable, it wasn't that they feared the Thieves Guild, but if he concealed the trouble he was carrying when he joined the ship and brought problems, then he would simply have to be killed. However, this was merely speculation with no definitive conclusion yet. After all, there were countless tiger people mixing in this region. I was just talking, Ren chuckled. Time to pack up and get on the ship. Genshin. Start. Shut up. UX had no inclination to retort. That tiger people seemed to have been recommended by the first mate to join the ship. This matter needed to be put on the agenda, definitely before they set sail. You really have no sense of humor. Ren, holding a money bag containing about 80 gold dragons, slowly walked into the inn, finding it dull. Chapter 5v. Outlaws. Linden City Inner Ring. The underground money house was located beneath a casino. Lending and gambling are complementary. With cheating, debt is created at zero cost, then rolled into usury, short cycle, quick results. The only drawback is that it's not stable enough. You need someone to cover you or have some skills yourself to even consider this line of work. If an honest person tried this job, he might end up as a corpse exposed to the rain the next morning. The iron gate at the entrance of the money house was strangely twisted from the inside out, as if someone had desperately tried to escape. The central hall of the first underground floor. The room was littered with scattered corpses, blood flowing into pools, and flies were already buzzing around, the smell pungent. People have joys and sorrows, while cattle and horses adorn life. Morrison sat on the silk cushion of a high-grade red pine chair, his legs crossed, letting a survivor wipe the fresh blood from his boots. He was about 1.8 meters tall. His curly black hair, like a winding snake, looked as if it had been drenched. Half of his face was severely burned and disfigured. To make the complex, twisted burn scars look better, he had carved more than a dozen straight, prominent diagonal scars with a knife, which indeed harmonized it quite a bit. Morrison was dressed very simply. A cracked and faded crocodile skin jacket, black cotton and linen trousers, and a pair of sturdy, durable leather boots. But he carried an entire arsenal of weapons. A repeating crossbow strapped to his left arm, a custom shoulder strap from which hung about 20 throwing knives, and around his waist, his signature 2 whips, one leather whip and one iron whip blade, like the belly of a python, entirely made of blades. In his hand, he was toying with a large dagger, the most versatile weapon, effective in all situations. The remaining thugs of the money house had their backs soaked with cold sweat, kneeling and trembling as they used a silk scarf to wipe Morrison's boots. 2/4 of an hour ago, the dark elf, who had been working at the money house for half a month, said he had found a few suckers they could fleece, and had someone open the iron gate. But then 4 guys rushed in. The tallest one, a lizard man, was almost as tall as the ceiling of this floor. After these people entered, they locked the gate, and then, without a word, started killing everyone they saw. That dark elf was no pushover either, directly cutting off a thug's head with a swift strike of his knife. The money house had also hired a few tough guys who had worked as escorts and mixed in the underworld, but they were no match for these killers, especially this man with half his face disfigured. A throwing knife with a scalp still attached was currently pinned to the wall. The boss of the money house, who managed the floor, was hit by a throwing knife from the scarface that pierced his brow, directly shattering it, exploding out from the back of his head, and sending a piece of his scalp flying onto the wall. Morrison saw that his boots were almost clean, stood up, and went to the desk. He hadn't seen the fruits in the fruit bowl before. These villains were rich beyond belief, probably seasonal fruits rushed in from somewhere else. He took out a purple berry and chewed it a few times. "Eating this won't kill you, will it?" Morrison mused. It was juicy and plump, perfectly sweet and sour, and the springy texture of the pulp when ground between his tongue and teeth was incomparable to cheap goods. These rotten people really knew how to enjoy themselves. The few survivors dared not speak, only trembled, afraid of saying something wrong and enraging these people. Morrison walked over to Swan, the tiger people, who was currently tinkering with the safe's iron gate lock using 2 strange, rod-like awls. "Can you do it? It's taking you so long to pick it," Morrison questioned. He had accidentally killed the manager here earlier and couldn't find the key for a while, but this tiger people had volunteered. Among the tiger people race, Swan was considered on the leaner side, not very tall, and walked silently. His movements when skinning someone earlier were quite agile. "Give me more time. Don't disturb me." Swan's brown fur was sparse, and his green beast eyes were full of gloom. He was concentrating on listening for the horizontal position of the bolt inside the lock. At this moment, Shadi led Lee to the scene. "Aren't you done yet? We can't stay here long." The guard on lookout outside said the sheriff can only give us another 1/4 of an hour. They need to clear the scene, and the dead need to be registered. Lee kicked aside 2 corpses and approached the black sail first mate. Finn was currently looking at the ledger. If he wasn't mistaken, there should be 317 gold dragons in the vault. This net profit was equivalent to robbing 2 merchant ships. Almost, Swan is opening the vault lock. Finn adjusted his chain-adorned monocle. His long, straight black hair was casually draped, and he wore a dark purple silk-fitted, belted robe, giving him an air of a refined scholar. His eyebrows were like sword tips, his lips thin, and his features stern. He was quite handsome, but his overly cold eyes appeared extremely sinister. Lee scanned the basement. Brother Shah, the tiger people were all there, but one was missing. Where's that big lizard man? Lee searched. The most exaggerated in size among the black sail was that guy. Someone that big couldn't possibly be hard to find. There wasn't even a place for him to rest on the ship. He was too big, always sleeping in the cargo hold. He went to the blacksmith's. This place is too narrow. The axe he was swinging kept hitting things and got ruined. He said he feels uncomfortable without a proper tool. Finn closed the ledger and held the book over a candle flame. In a moment, it was completely consumed. Forget it. Don't mind that idiot, Lee said. Then he and the others gathered to watch Swan pick the lock. A classic scene, one person working, several people giving instructions. Then, a crisp click of turning gears and bolts was heard. It's done. Swan withdrew his awls and effortlessly pushed open the iron gate. How much did you get over there? Finn asked Lee, wanting to calculate the total. 79 gold dragons, and some silver coins not yet counted, so roughly 83 or 84. Lee replied, Is that so? Then that's about 400 total. Even Finn had a slight smile on his lips, though this smile was more like a facial muscle twitch. This job was a bit too easy. These cowards in the city were like chopping vegetables, overly simple. This single job was very cost-effective. 400. Leah's face lit up with joy. You are the captain, please go first. Finn made a gesturing motion for Lee to enter. Lee quickly waved his hand, glanced at Shadi, and said in a feigned respectful tone, You first, and you, my friend, are the true hero. Shadi clicked his tongue, because Leah's occasional fits of randomness always spouted some nonsensical words, and everyone on the ship had been led astray, more or less picking up some of it. He didn't care and was the first to enter the vault. As Lee was about to step in, Big problem, Shadi inside suddenly shouted, his tone full of panic. Even Lee was flustered. Was there no money? What the hell were they playing at then? If they couldn't pay the sheriff's bribe, they'd be in trouble. Without money, let alone recruiting sailors, their 10-plus crew couldn't even sail the two-masted ship, and they'd be stuck in Linden City. He took 2 steps at a time, quickly entering the vault. Damn it! Big problem, Lee also shouted. The two of them, startled and exclaiming, performed a double act. Finn also frowned deeply. If there was no money in the vault, they couldn't have come all this way for nothing. On the surface, this was pirates killing local tyrants, but in reality, it was Lord plotting against Lord. To cover the deficit of the pirate crew from the previous period, there was only one path. Go all the way, cut off the opposing lord's head for a reward, and hang it high on top of the Bright Sun Tower. And if their own lord could reward them, that would be good. If he dared not, they would all go to the top of the tower together.